What would you do if your pride and joy, a beast of a truck you built with your own hands, got snatched away by someone who hated you for just existing? What if that truck wasn't just a ride, but a secret weapon in a federal sting, and the person who took it had no idea they just torched a massive investigation? Meet Darius Jackson, a black vet who thought he'd found peace in a quiet Atlanta suburb, only to stumble into a war with a suburban dictator named Patty Hensley. She didn't just want his truck gone. She wanted him gone. But here's the kicker. How far would her petty hate spiral before it blew up in her face, turning a sleepy neighborhood into a viral battlefield? Stick around, because this tale of racism, revenge, and a roaring Bronco is one you won't believe. Before we dive in, if you love stories where underdogs flip the script and petty tyrants get what's coming, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Now let's roll into Pinewood Hills and see how it all started. Darius Jackson had never shied away from a fight. Growing up on Chicago's South Side, he dodged bullets before he could pedal a bike. Real bullets that shattered windows on humid summer nights. In Iraq, as an army mechanic, he'd spent 2 tours wrenching Humvees back to life under a blistering sun. Sand grinding his teeth, mortars shaking the ground. At 38, with a decade of drifting between cities behind him, he was done with chaos. Pinewood Hills, a neat suburban nook outside Atlanta, offered a different tune. Wide green lawns, quiet streets, and a 2-car garage where he could sink into the hum of an engine. His prize, a matte gray Ford Bronco with reinforced bumpers, blackout rims, and a growl that turned heads, was his shadow, a survivor pieced together by his own scarred hands. He knew he'd stick out, a black man rolling into a mostly white enclave with a truck that roared, "Don't test me," wasn't subtle, but he'd earned it. Sweat, scars, and a VA loan carved his name into Pinewood Hills. Keep his head down, hands busy, and maybe they'd let him breathe. The first week teased peace. Kids looped bikes lazily, barbecue smoke curled through the air. Neighbors gave tight nods from porches. Darius unpacked, lined his garage with polished tools, and tweaked the Bronco's suspension, losing hours to its familiar rumble. It wasn't just a truck. It was his anchor. A month earlier, in a dimly lit diner, Deputy Ortiz had slid a coffee across the table with a proposition. "Pinewood's got a meth ring festering under its white pickets," he'd said, voice low. "We need a surveillance point. That Bronco's perfect, tough, unassuming." Darius had leaned back, skeptical, until Ortiz showed him the gear. Covert cameras, GPS trackers, audio mics. They'd gutted the truck and rebuilt it in a sheriff's garage. Darius tightening bolts as Ortiz wired the black box under the dash. "Park it out front. Shift it now and then. Keep quiet," Ortiz instructed. Darius nodded. Extra cash was nice, but sticking it to Pinewood's underbelly felt better. Then came Patricia Patty Hensley. Day 8, she rolled up in a golf cart, a suburban dictator on patrol. Wiry, 50s, her perm so tight it seemed to choke her scalp. Her eyes sliced through Darius's Bronco like it was a trespasser. She'd ruled Pinewood Hills for a decade, ever since new folks, darker folks, started moving in, threatening her vision of a pure past. She didn't bother with a hello. "That thing doesn't belong here," she snapped, barely glancing at Darius, her stare fixed on the truck like it had spat on her kin. "This is Pinewood Hills, not some inner-city chop shop." The racism stung, sharp and unveiled. Darius clenched his jaw, kept his voice steady. "It's my work truck, ma'am. Sheriff's office gig." Patty smirked, lips curling sourly. "Sure, sweetheart. Get a Prius next time. Fit in like civilized folk." War ignited, quiet, petty, personal. Patty didn't just hate the Bronco. She hated him. Notes hit his door every few days, typed primly on HOA letterhead. Unauthorized modifications, excessive urban aesthetic, parking intimidation. One sneered, cultural misalignment with community standards. A dog whistle howling Jim Crow's echo. He'd faced rockets overseas, but this was a clipboard-wielding bigot, her hate dressed in bylaws. He ignored her, hoping she'd burn out. She didn't. Patty's obsession swelled. She called the county 5 times, branding the Bronco abandoned, dismissing Darius's registration like it was a forgery. She'd linger by his driveway, muttering about keeping the neighborhood pure, her voice a taunt. Once, he caught her eyeing his garage, lips pursed, as if his tools offended her too. He bolted a heavy-duty will lock on the Bronco, a steel back-off to her crusade. It backfired. Tuesday, while he grabbed bolts at the hardware store, she struck. Neighbor Jamal, a retired bus driver with a ring cam obsession, caught it. Patty marching up, bolt cutters gleaming, slicing the lock with a smug grin. "One less blight on my street," she chirped to the lens. A shady tow truck hauled the Bronco off, leaving a neon yellow cone and a note, "HOA violation, relocated." Darius got home, saw the cone, and chuckled until the weight crashed in. That wasn't just his truck. It was a federal lifeline. He dialed Ortiz, his heart pounding. 30 minutes later, the deputy stood on his porch, face ashen. She towed what? The ring footage rolled. Patty, triumphant, clueless she'd gutted a sting. Ortiz muttered, "That's obstruction, maybe worse." At 3:17 a.m., sirens screamed. Lights flashed. Agents swarmed, demanding answers. Darius pointed west. "Ask Patty." Darius didn't sleep after the sirens died. The image of task force agents pacing his lawn, radios spitting static, burned into his skull like a nightmare on loop. His Bronco, his shield, his proof he could build something unbroken, was gone. Snatched by a woman who'd rather see him chased out of Pinewood Hills than share her air. He sat on the porch as dawn bled orange over the rooftops, replaying it all. Patty's smirk, her bolt cutters, the cone mocking his empty driveway. He'd wanted peace, a garage, a quiet life, not another war. But Patty had dragged him back to the battlefield, and this time he couldn't just duck and cover. By sunrise, his phone buzzed. Ortiz texting, "We found it. Brace yourself." No details, just a gut punch. He threw on a hoodie, met Ortiz at the curb. The deputy's jaw was locked, eyes shadowed. A man chewing bad news. "Hop in," he said, nodding to an unmarked SUV. They drove in silence, twisting through back roads until a rusted gate loomed behind an HOA shed Darius had never clocked. Ortiz punched a code, and the gate groaned open, unveiling a junkyard nightmare. Weeds choking the ground, tarps flapping, traffic cones scattered like gravestones. 3 wrecks rotted there, rusted sedans with peeling stickers, a motorcycle missing its wheel, and in the corner, his Bronco, scratched and muddy, dumped like trash. The mirror hung by a thread, the surveillance case gaped open, cameras smashed, wires gutted. Darius's stomach knotted. Months of work, his work, trashed by a racist with a vendetta against his black skin and his thug truck. "This ain't a tow lot," Ortiz snarled, kicking a cone. "It's her private damn dump." He snapped photos, swearing under his breath. Heels clicked on gravel. Patty strutted in, lipstick smeared, golf cart skewed outside the gate like she'd crashed it in a huff. Her reign over Pinewood Hills had started a decade ago, when the first outsiders moved in, folks like Darius, threatening her grip on a fading white utopia. "Oh good, you found it," she chirped, all fake cheer, like she'd returned a lost wallet. "I was going to notify you." Ortiz spun, voice ablade. "Ma'am, step back. You towed federal property." Patty blinked, smugness wavering. "That eyesore? It was abandoned. I'm HOA president. I remove hazards." Ortiz's eyes narrowed. "Not a task force operation." Her face twisted, lips vanishing into a pucker. "I thought it was some thug's junker," she spat, glaring at Darius. "I was protecting us from riffraff." The mask was off, her hate naked now, no more veil jabs. Ortiz didn't budge. "Backup's coming. Stay put." He radioed, voice clipped, as Patty launched a tirade. Neighborhood standards. People who don't belong. Darius tuned her out, staring at his Bronco's cracked shell. He'd seen hate before, cops tailing him on the south side, sergeants doubting his skills in Iraq. But this was personal. a woman wielding petty power to erase him. He'd moved here to escape fighting, not to pick up a new enemy. Yet here he was, forced to stand because sitting wasn't an option. Not with her. Backup rolled in, uniforms and suits spilling out, hauling Patty off. She dug her heels in, ranting about rights until a deputy slammed the door on her noise. Darius handed Ortiz Jamal's footage. Patty slicing the lock, laughing as the tow truck dragged his Bronco away. The tow crew was cash-only, unlicensed, a shadow outfit. By evening, Ortiz called, voice heavy. The sting was dead. Dealers bolted, spooked by the chaos. The gear was scrap, months lost. She's clueless what she's done, he said. But she'll learn. Word raced through Pinewood Hills. Neighbors whispered, some gleeful, some stunned. Jamal, sipping soda on his porch, grinned. She's toast, man. Post this online. Darius shrugged, exhaustion weighing his bones. Go wild. Jamal didn't waste a second and pounced. By dusk, Reddits r/entitled people lit up. HOA racist tows black vet's truck. It was a Fed sting. 2 million views in hours. TikTok remixed Patty's Protecting Us into a cringe auto-tune bop, her face plastered across memes. News vans swarmed Darius's street by nightfall, cameras flashing, reporters yelling. Pinewood Hills was a circus, Patty the clown. Darius didn't laugh. The task force was livid. Ortiz's phone buzzing with brass tearing strips off him. Darius sat on his porch, staring at the Bronco's empty spot. Patty's words, riffraff, thug, echoing. How did a truck and a skin tone unravel a federal case? He didn't want this fight, but she'd forced his hand. Jamal popped another soda. Round one's ours. She ain't ready for two. Friday night draped Pinewood Hills in a thick, electric hush. The community center bursting at the seams. Residents crammed onto folding chairs. Reporters jostled with mics. And 3 stone-faced suits. Task Force brass, Darius guessed, loomed near the back, arms crossed like sentinels. Patty's stunt had ignited a wildfire, and everyone craved the reckoning. Darius leaned against a wall, arms folded, his gut a tangle of rage and weariness. He dodged news crews all week, haunted by Jamal's footage. Patty's smug slash of the lock, her venom seeping through every frame. He didn't want this war, hadn't signed up to be a soldier again, but she'd left him no choice. Tonight, she'd face the music, and he'd make damn sure she heard it. Patty swept in 15 minutes late, strutting like an unbroken queen. Her red blazer gleamed, perm a fortress of defiance, clipboard clutched like a scepter. She'd ruled Pinewood Hills since the old guard started fading. New faces like Darius eroding her pure kingdom, a decade of power now teetering. She tapped the mic, thunk-thunk, and flashed a syrupy smile. Thank you for coming on short notice, she purred, voice dripping poison honey. I'm here to clear up the hysteria over my removal of an unregistered, chained-up truck, a menace to our safety, abandoned by certain elements. Her eyes flicked to Darius, a barb in her glance. The room bristled, murmurs buzzing. I acted to preserve Pinewood Hills, she cooed. That's my duty, Darius snapped. He stepped forward, voice a blade through her lies. You mean me, Patty? Cut the crap. You towed a federal truck and bragged about it. Murmurs swelled, heads whipping around. Patty's smile twitched, but he pressed on. He handed Jamal's USB to the AV kid, a lanky teen hovering by the projector, grinning like he'd waited his whole life for this. The screen flared. Patty slicing the lock, smirking into the camera, waving the tow truck on like a game show host. Then her Facebook posts rolled, keeping Pinewood pure. No ghetto rigs here. Some don't belong. Gasps ripped through the room. A woman up front clutched her pearls. A guy in back snorted, loud and sharp. Patty sputtered, gripping her clipboard. It violated bylaws. I had every right. No, you didn't. Cut a voice, calm but lethal. Deputy Sarah Cole stepped forward, folder thick in hand, badge glinting under the lights. She'd lurked in the shadows, now stalking like a panther. We've reviewed your charter. You skipped the board, used an unlicensed tow crew, Hid it in your private lot. That truck was ours, task force property. Your stunt killed a meth bust we'd built for months. Patty's jaw dropped, disbelief twisting her face. Meth? You can't be dead serious, Sarah snapped. You trashed evidence, spooked dealers, cost us everything. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, stifled cheers. The board, led by Carl, a wiry accountant who'd cowered under Patty's reign, squirmed. Carl coughed, voice quaking. I move to suspend Patricia Hensley as HOA president. Pending investigation. Ellen, gray-haired and timid, rasped. Seconded. A third voice croaked. All in favor? Hands shot up, unanimous. Patty was out. She shrieked. You can't do this. Waving a crumpled letter. This is a cease and desist, entrapment, racial defamation by him. She jabbed at Darius. Sarah snatched it, skimmed, smirked. Vince Russo? Crooks under 3 probes. Good luck. Patty's face blazed red. She spun to the board, but they shrank back like she was toxic. She stormed out, barking, This isn't over. The room exploded. Cheers, claps, a standing ovation for a tyrant's fall. As the crowd thinned, Sarah sidled up. DA's on it. Tampering, obstruction, more. Darius nodded, still reeling. He'd fought because he had to, not for glory, but for the right to exist here, black and unbowed. Carl shuffled over, scratching his neck. She fined me once for a 2-ethnic gnome Mexican hat. We were scared stiff. Darius clapped his shoulder. Not now. Later, Miss Loretta, a wiry grandma, cornered him with a grin. I taped her yelling at my wind chimes once. Too loud, she said. Posted it last night. Got 10K likes. She cackled, and Darius cracked a smile, community striking back. That night he slept hard, no sirens, no notes, just Patty's weight lifting. But her kind didn't fade. They festered. Round 3 loomed and he'd be ready. Monday dawned chaotic in Pinewood Hills. Patty's HOA meltdown, a Molotov cocktail scorching the internet. Darius couldn't escape the chaos. His phone buzzed nonstop. His porch a perch for watching the storm unfold. Jamal's Reddit post, HOA racist tows black vet's truck. It was a Fed sting. Blasted to her entitled People's front page overnight, snagging 2 million views before Darius finished his coffee. TikTok latched on, remixing Patty's Protecting Us, rant into an auto-tuned earworm. Kids hummed it on bikes by noon, a beat so sticky it haunted him. X drowned in memes. Patty photoshopped into Grand Theft Auto, bolt cutters gleaming, captioned, Federal charges unlocked. Her golf cart morphed into a getaway ride. Mission failed. Suburbia's most wanted. Darius scrolled, half laughing, half dazed. She'd gone from dictator to punchline in 48 hours flat. The circus peaked Tuesday when Patty resurfaced, staging a press conference outside the county courthouse. Her blazer hung wrinkled, hair fraying like her grip on reality, flanked by Vince Russo, a sleazy lawyer with slicked-back hair and sunglasses screaming midlife crisis. Cameras rolled as she gripped the mic, voice quivering with fake outrage. I'm the victim, she declared, a decade of clinging to Pinewood's pure past cracking in her tone. The police didn't mark that truck. She jabbed toward Darius's street, lured me with his thug truck. My bylaws grant immunity. Vince smirked, tossing in municipal overreach like a buzzword bingo champ. It was so absurd a news anchor choked mid-broadcast, coughing over laughter. The internet feasted. #ThugTruck trended by supper. Patty's face a viral piñata. Justice hit Wednesday like a sledgehammer. The DA filed charges. Unauthorized towing, property destruction, obstruction, tampering with surveillance gear. The feds followed, their letter to the HOA icy. Operations compromised by rogue actions. Carl, thrust into interim president, called a meeting and axed Patty's purity patrol. Her pet squad for finding undesirables. Neighbors clapped in the street, a block party vibe sparking. Thursday, the task force rolled up, returning Darius's Bronco, scratched but whole, then unveiled an upgrade. Tactical panels, reinforced glass, a beast reborn. Ortiz clapped his back. You earned it, man. She didn't break you. The HOA's insurer dropped a bomb Friday. An audit peeled back years of Patty's grift. Thousands siphoned for towing, Inc. Her precious golf cart, buried in administrative recovery lies. A fraud probe opened, whispers of felonies swirling. Patty countered, filing a suit against the HOA, city, police, and Darius, claiming he'd enticed her by parking legally on his own turf. The judge smirked, tossing it like junk mail. Her rep was ash. Memes dubbed her suburbia's racist Robin Hood. A bandit undone by her own bolt cutters. Pinewood Hills flipped overnight. Wildflowers sprouted. Kids scrawled chalk art. Porch chairs bloomed. No fines. No notes. Jamal, ever the hustler, launched HOA-free.net. A haven for HOA victims with a timeline of Patty's reign and Bronco justice teas that sold out in hours. Neighbors who dodged Darius now waved, some lingering to admire the truck like it was a war hero. Miss Loretta, wiry and sharp, brought peach cobbler on Friday, grinning. She fined me once, said my Jamaican flag was too loud visually, made a TikTok of her ranting at it. Hit 50K views. She cackled, and Darius laughed, community claws out, scratching back. That night, Patty tried a last gasp, a mascara-streaked Facebook Live from her driveway, wailing about federal overreach and reverse racism. Tanked. Comments flooded with laughing emojis. A kid donated $5. Buy better bolt cutters. She cut it at 10 minutes, humiliated. Teens across Atlanta dubbed strict moms Patty Hensley's. Her name slang for petty tyranny. Darius leaned back in his garage, tools still, Bronco gleaming under the lights. He'd craved peace, a wrench in hand, not a war, but Patty's hate had lit the fuse. He hadn't asked to fight, but standing tall against her felt right. A black man unbowed in her whitewashed world. Now her empire was rubble, Pinewood breathing free, and he tasted victory, not just over her, but every sidelong glare since day one. Jamal strolled up, soda fizzing. Round three's ours, man. She's got zip left. Darius nodded, a rare smile cracking. Let's see her dig out. The Bronco's rumble echoed in his head. A survivor standing firm. Saturday, Miss Loretta's grandson, a lanky teen named Ty, dropped by with a grin. Made a fake ad. Patty's towing. We snag feds. Went viral, 100K likes. Darius chuckled, picturing Patty's face. The kid's spark lit something. Pinewood wasn't just free. It was alive, laughing back at her ghost. Round 4 loomed, but for now the storm was theirs. A week after Patty's Facebook flop, Pinewood Hills woke to a Saturday so still it felt staged. Like the world held its breath before a curtain drop. Darius sipped coffee on his porch, thumbing through #ThugTruck memes. When a convoy shattered the calm. 3 black SUVs, a sedan, and 2 marshals in crisp uniforms stepping out with cold authority. They strode to Patty's house, knocked once, waited 30 seconds, then blared through a megaphone. Patricia Hensley, U.S. Marshal Service. Open the door or we will. No reply. A locksmith popped the lock, the door creaked wide, and tension crackled. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Jamal, ever the showman, hauled a lawn chair and popcorn to his stoop, grinning like it was fight night. Patty's arrest warrant was live, curtain up. 5 minutes crawled by before she stumbled out. Hair a tangled mess, red blazer crumpled like she'd slept in it for days. No defiance left, just a slow, broken shuffle, hands cuffed in front, clutching a manila folder like a shield against reality. Her eyes flicked wildly, disbelief etched deep, as if towing a truck couldn't unravel her decade-long reign over Pinewood's pure illusion. A marshal gripped her arm, steering her to the SUV, but she twisted free for one last gasp, shrieking, "I'll sue you all, every last one of you miserable ingrates." The door slammed mid-rant, muffling her, and the street exploded. Cheers, whoops, Jamal sparking leftover 4th of July flares. Miss Loretta clapped from her porch, wind chimes jangling a victory tune. Unplanned, unscripted, perfect. A tyrant felled, a neighborhood unchained. Sarah Cole rolled up that afternoon, debriefing Darius with a grin she couldn't hide. Final haul: obstruction, tampering, illegal towing, fund misuse, suspected embezzlement, she said, sliding him a charge sheet thick as a crime novel. The HOA imploded. Half the board quit. The rest voted to torch it rather than face a resident class action suit. Bylaws once swung like gospel were shredded. Fines evaporated. Pinewood Hills burst alive. Lawns went rogue with wildflowers. Mailboxes flashed neon. Kids raced bikes free of visual pollution snipes. It wasn't just freedom. It was defiance. A collective roar against Patty's shadow. Monday, the task force dropped a stunner. Ortiz and Sarah pulled up, casual in jeans and tees, beaming like kids with a secret. They led Darius to the old HOA shed lot, Patty's impound graveyard, now county auctioned and scrubbed clean. Ortiz tossed him a jangling key ring. "Yours," he said. "We snagged it for the community, but you run it. Payback for surviving that harpy." Darius blinked, deed in hand, floored. The spot where she'd ripped his Bronco away was his now, irony so rich it sang. He dubbed it the Hub, a community garage with workbenches, a repair bay, tools donated by neighbors who'd once ducked his gaze. No fees, no permits, just a space for vets, teens, anyone with a wrench and a pulse. Saturday, the task force threw a Bronco parade to christen it. The street roared with trucks. Military rigs, battered classics, custom jobs, vets and cops from across the county rolling deep. Darius led, his upgraded Bronco gleaming, hood watchdog, stenciled bold white on the hood. Kids waved flags, parents hollered, Jamal livestreamed to a million eyes. The parade coiled to the Journal of the Hub, where Sarah handed Darius a plaque. To Darius Jackson, for keeping cool when the HOA went full villain. Laughter rippled, but the weight hit hard. This wasn't just Patty's fall. It was proof a black man could stand unbowed against hate and claim the day. Patty's plea slunk in quiet. No jail, but brutal fines, HOA restitution, a 20-year ban from any board. She sold her house under moonlight, price hacked to scraps, and vanished. No farewells, no tracks. Darius's sign, reserved for tactical kings, rose by his curb, a legend cemented. Pinewood thrived. Barbecues blazed, trees sprouted. Folks called it Thug Truck Estates with a smirk. The Bronco stood proud, a survivor turned icon. Sunday, Miss Loretta dragged her grandson Ty over, both grinning wide. "Tell him," she nudged. Ty, lanky and sly, laughed. "She fined me once, said my skateboard ramp was too urban. Built it twice as big after she split. Vid of me grinding it hit 200K views." Darius chuckled, picturing Patty's scowl melting. Later, Carl stopped by, sheepish. "She nailed me for a too-ethnic gnome sombrero. I hid it for years. It's back out now. Community scars faded. Defiance blooming in every yard." That night, Jamal ambled over with a beer. "She thought she'd crush you," he said, nodding at the Bronco. "Now look, her empire's ash, your king." Darius sipped his, smiling rare. Didn't want a crown, just a garage. But he'd one more. A neighborhood that saw him, not his skin or ride. Patty's hate had ricocheted, bearing her rot and freeing Pinewood from her grip. Every Bronco growl sang it. Justice didn't need a gavel, just a lock she couldn't cut. Darius saluted a kid biking past, sun dipping low. Round 5 was his, the tale one hell of a ride. Lessons learned from the story. So, what's the takeaway from Darius Jackson's wild ride in Pinewood Hills? First off, it's about standing your ground. Darius didn't go looking for a fight, but when Patty came for him, his truck, his piece, he didn't back down. It's a reminder that sometimes, the battles you don't choose are the ones that define you. Second, it shows how hate can blind people. Patty's obsession with purity didn't just ruin her. It wrecked a federal sting and turned her into a laughingstock. Finally, it's proof that community beats tyranny every time. When Pinewood Hills rallied, from Jamal's memes to the Hub's creation, they turned Patty's collapse into their victory. Life lesson: Don't let petty bullies dim your shine. Fight smart, lean on your people, and watch karma do its thing. Meaningful message conveyed. This story's got a deeper heartbeat. Justice doesn't always need a courtroom. It can roll in on four wheels and a viral wave. Darius's Bronco wasn't just a truck. It was a symbol of resilience, a black man's refusal to be erased in a world that too often tries to box him in. Patty's downfall sends a loud message. Hate might scream, but it crumbles when truth and unity hit back. It's about reclaiming your space, turning pain into power, and proving that even the smallest spark, like a tow truck gone wrong, can ignite a revolution. At its core, this tale whispers hope. No matter how loud the bigots get, they can't outlast a community that's had enough. Personal perspective on the story. Here's my 2 cents. Darius's story hits me because it's real, raw, and messy, but damn inspiring. I love how he didn't just survive Patty's crap. He flipped it into something bigger, like the hub and that epic Bronco parade. It's not just about one guy winning. It's about a whole neighborhood waking up and saying, "We're done with this nonsense." Patty's the kind of villain you hate to love, all smug and clueless. But her crash? Pure gold. To me, this isn't just a revenge tale. It's a middle finger to every sideways glance or snide remark anyone's ever swallowed. It's personal because we've all met a Patty, and seeing her lose to a guy who just wanted to fix his truck feels like justice we can cheer for. Loved watching Darius take down Patty and turn Pinewood Hills into a legend? Then you've got to stick with us. Hit that like button if this story got your blood pumping, and subscribe to Story Precious for the freshest videos dropping hot every week. We're all about epic underdog tales, jaw-dropping twists, and moments that make you want to cheer or laugh till you cry. Join the crew, turn on notifications, and don't miss a single second of the action. Story Precious is where the best stories live. Let's keep the ride going together.